Story 1 Reyhan'S journey at Untag Surabaya. 1 Untag Surabaya campus. The sun peeked through the tall trees lining the entrance of Universitas 17 Augustus 1945, Untag, Surabaya, casting a warm glow over the students walking briskly toward their morning classes. The campus was a lively microcosm of energy and diversity, a place where dreams were nurtured, challenges faced, and friendships forged. Students bustled through the walkways, some with books tightly held in their arms, others chatting over breakfast from nearby food stalls. The air was filled with the sounds of footsteps, laughter, and the occasional hum of a motorcycle zipping past the main gate. Across the vast campus, a variety of activities colored the daily rhythm. In one corner, students rehearsed for a cultural performance, in another, a debate club practiced intensely for an upcoming competition. The student center buzzed with life, filled with announcements for workshops, career fairs, and student organization meetings. Untag Surabaya wasn't just a place to study, it was a vibrant community that reflected the hopes, talents, and struggles of its students. In the midst of this vibrant environment was a young man who quietly stood out, not because of any showy charisma or dramatic flair, but because of his quiet consistency and earnest presence. His name was Reyhan. To campus lobby. It was mid-morning, and the campus lobby was alive with motion. Students came and went, gathering in small clusters. Some were discussing course schedules, while others debated fiercely over project deadlines. A few sat quietly on benches with their laptops open, fingers flying across keyboards as they worked on group assignments. The space echoed with casual conversation, the beeping of phones, and the clicking of computer keys. Reyhan sat at one of the tables near the window, his brow furrowed in concentration. His notebook was filled with neatly written notes, and his laptop screen showed a presentation slide he was preparing for a group project. Around him, the lobby seemed to fade into the background as he focused intently on his task. Not far from Reyhan, 3 students were huddled in discussion. Fajar, Danai, and Alex, his closest friends, were deep in conversation, but their expressions showed frustration more than focus. "Bro, I still don't get what the lecturer meant by independent variable in our statistics assignment," Alex said, tapping his pen impatiently against the table. "I haven't even started yet," Danai muttered, yawning. "Too many deadlines this week. I don't even know where to begin." Fajar leaned back in his chair and glanced toward Reyhan. "Let's ask Reyhan. He probably finished it already." As if on cue, Reyhan looked up and smiled warmly. "Need help?" he asked, already turning his laptop screen toward them. This small gesture was typical of Reyhan. He was known among his peers not just for being a top student, but for his willingness to help others without complaint. In that moment, the lobby felt like a classroom in itself, where one student's discipline became the inspiration for others. 3 Reyhan and his circle of friends. Reyhan had always believed that effort mattered more than intelligence. Coming from a modest background, he knew the value of education and was determined not to waste a single day. He walked to campus each morning, rain or shine, and arrived early enough to review his notes before class began. Though Reyhan often kept a structured routine, he wasn't a loner. In fact, he was quite sociable and had a close group of friends, Fajar, Danai, and Alex. They had all met during orientation week and had stuck together since then. While Reyhan was known for his discipline, his friends were, well, more relaxed. Fajar was the joker of the group. Always ready with a sarcastic comment or a meme to lighten the mood, he often brushed off academic stress with humor. Danai, on the other hand, was a dreamer. He often got lost in music, spending more time on his guitar than on his books. Alex was tech-savvy and loved coding, but he struggled to manage his time, often cramming assignments at the last minute. Despite their differences, the bond between the 4 was strong. Reyhan never judged his friends. Instead, he tried to lead by example, gently nudging them toward better habits. "Guys, if we do a little bit every day, it won't pile up," he often reminded them. Sometimes his advice was met with groans, but more often than not, it inspired quiet reflection. One afternoon, after class, Danai confessed, "Honestly, Reyhan, I admire how consistent you are. I always start strong but end up distracted." Reyhan chuckled. "It's not about being perfect, Den. It's about showing up. Every day. Even when you don't feel like it." For Reyhan's daily routine. Reyhan's day usually began before sunrise. He would wake up at 5 a.m., quickly wash up, and then spend 30 minutes reviewing his notes or watching tutorial videos related to his major. He liked the stillness of the early morning, it gave him clarity and peace before the busyness of the day began. By 7:30 a.m., he was already on his way to campus. He liked arriving early to grab a spot in the front row, close to the lecturer. For Reyhan, understanding the material during class was half the battle. He believed in active listening and often asked questions not to show off, but to clarify concepts. After lectures, while many students headed to the canteen or took a break, Reyhan would usually visit the library. It had become his second home on campus. The scent of old books, the quiet rustling of pages, and the soft hum of air conditioning created a perfect environment for focus. Sometimes he stayed for hours, working through assignments, planning projects, or helping classmates who asked for guidance. In the afternoons, Reyhan often joined group discussions. Unlike some who dreaded teamwork, Reyhan welcomed it. He saw collaboration as an opportunity to learn from others. He also made it a point to include his friends, encouraging Fajar, Danai, and Alex to join study groups or review sessions. At home in the evenings, Reyhan kept a planner where he noted all upcoming deadlines. This small habit helped him stay organized and avoid last-minute panics. If he had free time, he would listen to podcasts about self-discipline or watch English language documentaries to improve his comprehension. Despite his busy schedule, Reyhan never forgot to check in with his friends. He would text reminders about assignments or suggest meeting spots to study together. While his friends didn't always follow through, they appreciated his effort. "Sometimes I feel like you're our unofficial tutor," Alex joked once. "Or our conscience." Reyhan smiled and said, "Nah, I'm just trying to survive college with my sanity intact and I want you guys to graduate with me." 5. The power of friendship and quiet leadership. Over time, something interesting began to happen at the heart of their small group. Though Fajar still cracked jokes and Danai still strummed his guitar during breaks, there was a subtle shift in the way they approached their campus life. At first, it was hard to notice. The changes were quiet, almost like the slow bloom of a flower. But Reyhan saw them. Fajar, who used to saunter into class 10 minutes late with a lazy smile, began showing up just as the lecturer started speaking. Sometimes he even arrived early, settling into his seat with a notebook in hand, ready to jot down the day's lessons. He still had his usual charm and wit, but his questions in class had become more thoughtful. The same student who once shrugged off assignments with a laugh now stayed behind to ask clarifying questions or review difficult material with Reyhan. Danai, who once relied solely on his memory and a quick glance at borrowed notes, started bringing a notebook to every class. It was plain, with worn edges and doodles around the margins, but it was filled with his own handwritten summaries and reflections. Occasionally, Reyhan would find lyrics scribbled between paragraphs of sociology notes, but that was part of Danai's unique rhythm. More importantly, he had started to care about learning, not just passing. Alex, the tech-savvy multitasker who used to lose track of time working on side projects, came to Reyhan with a simple request: "Can you help me make a study schedule?" It was a turning point. For Alex to ask for structure meant he had begun to value focus, something Reyhan had always gently modeled. Together, they sat down at the campus cafe and mapped out a weekly routine, balancing academic deadlines with time for Alex's programming interests. Within a few weeks, Alex's grades began to reflect the difference. One afternoon, after a long group study session in the library, the four of them were walking across the courtyard when Fajar suddenly turned to Reyhan. "I never thought I'd say this," he said, half joking but entirely sincere, "but studying actually feels manageable now." There was a pause as they all looked at each other, realizing how far they had come. Reyhan didn't respond with a lecture or a motivational quote. He simply smiled, a soft, knowing smile. Inside, he felt a quiet pride swell in his chest. These small moments were everything. They were proof that change was possible, that consistency mattered, and that real influence often came not from loud speeches but from everyday actions. He had never tried to force his friends to be like him. Instead, he had shown up again and again, ready to help, ready to listen, ready to believe in their potential even when they didn't believe in themselves. In a way, Reyhan saw himself not as a leader, but as someone planting seeds. Seeds of discipline, of persistence, and perhaps even of hope. And now, those seeds were beginning to grow. He saw it in the way Fajar encouraged a new student to join their study group. He saw it in Danai's decision to balance music and academics with pride instead of conflict. He saw it in Alex, who had just volunteered to tutor a classmate struggling with a coding assignment. They were changing not into different people, but into better versions of themselves. As the golden afternoon light cast long shadows across the campus lawn, Reyhan walked with his friends, their laughter echoing between buildings. And though he said nothing, his heart was full. Not just because they had improved their grades, but because they had found something even more valuable: confidence, resilience, and the belief that they were capable of more than they once imagined. 6 challenges faced by Reyhan and friends. Although Reyhan managed his academic life with admirable discipline, his friends didn't have the same consistency. Fajar, Danai, and Alex each had their own struggles that made studying a challenge, not just in terms of skills, but also motivation and focus. Fajar, with his humorous and carefree attitude, often treated deadlines as flexible suggestions. He thrived on spontaneity but lacked planning. His assignments were frequently submitted late, and though he was bright, he didn't always take his academic responsibilities seriously. "I'll do it tonight," he'd often say, grinning only to stay up all night watching videos or scrolling through social media. Denai, meanwhile, battled with self-doubt. He loved music and often dreamed of becoming a performer. However, he felt torn between pursuing his passion and meeting academic expectations. That conflict left him emotionally drained. Some days, he would sit in class physically present but mentally elsewhere, his notebook blank while lyrics swirled in his mind. Alex had a different problem. He was talented with technology and frequently helped others troubleshoot their devices. But he struggled with time management. His tendency to focus on coding side projects meant that coursework often fell by the wayside. He was the kind of student who could write a brilliant essay only if reminded 3 times and given a strict deadline. Together, they formed a trio of potential intelligent, creative, and kind-hearted, but their academic paths were riddled with distractions and uncertainty. Reyhan, though diligent, wasn't free from his own challenges. He often felt the weight of responsibility both for his future and for helping his friends. At times, he worried that his efforts wouldn't be enough. There were days he questioned whether it was worth investing his energy into others when his own schedule was already packed. But then he would remember something his father told him once: a good life isn't measured only by your achievements, but by how you lift others as you rise. Balancing his academic load with emotional support for his friends became part of Reyhan's daily routine. It wasn't easy, but it taught him the value of patience, empathy, and quiet leadership. 7. Reyhan's influence and support. Reyhan never tried to force change. Instead, he led by example. He started organizing informal study sessions, inviting his friends without pressure. At first, only 1 or 2 would show up. Sometimes Denai would come but get distracted halfway through. Other times Alex would join, laptop in hand, but end up debugging code instead of reviewing notes. Fajar, as usual, would bring snacks and provide comic relief. But Reyhan didn't give up. Slowly, his consistency became contagious. His sessions weren't just about studying, they were also about reconnecting. He would ask about their week, listen to their worries, and offer small tips on how to stay focused. Try breaking your work into chunks, he once told Fajar. Just 20 minutes at a time. You'd be surprised how much you can do. Maybe I should write my guitar chords on the back of my lecture notes, Denai joked one day. You could, Reyhan replied with a smile. Or we could make a study playlist together. These gestures strengthened their bond. Reyhan wasn't trying to change who his friends were, he simply met them where they were and encouraged them to keep growing. One afternoon, after an intense group session for a final project, Alex stayed behind and said, "You know, Ray. I thought I was just bad at organizing my time. But maybe I just needed someone to show me how to start." It was in moments like these that Reyhan realized the true impact of his efforts. It wasn't about being the best student in the class, it was about helping others believe they could improve too. His support didn't stop at academics. When Fajar's father was hospitalized and he began skipping class, it was Reyhan who quietly visited him, bringing class notes and just sitting beside him in silence. When Denai doubted his decision to stay in university rather than pursue music full-time, Reyhan reminded him that life allowed room for both dreams and degrees. And when Alex failed a midterm exam and wanted to withdraw from the course, it was Reyhan who helped him find a tutor and rebuild his confidence. In those simple but meaningful ways, Reyhan became more than a friend, he became a source of strength. 8. Campus dynamics and friendship. As the semesters passed, Reyhan's influence extended beyond his circle of friends. Classmates began to notice how he handled challenges with calm, focus, and empathy. He wasn't loud or competitive, but his reliability made people trust him. In group projects, he often stepped up when others slacked off, not to control, but to ensure no one was left behind. Slowly, more students began approaching him with questions, asking for tips on studying, or even just seeking motivation. Fajar, Denai, and Alex changed too. Not overnight but through gradual, meaningful steps. Fajar started showing up to classes earlier, sometimes even taking notes without being asked. Denai began attending extra lectures and even applied to a student art competition, which Reyhan encouraged him to try. Alex, after several long nights with Reyhan, passed his programming course with flying colors and later helped other classmates who were struggling. The dynamic of their friendship shifted from one of imbalance to one of mutual support. Reyhan still led in many ways, but his friends began lifting each other too. Study sessions became spaces not just for learning, but for bonding. Laughter mingled with concentration. Questions turned into discussions. They even started a small peer group for other classmates who needed academic help, calling it Taman Belajar. What began as a quiet effort by Reyhan grew into a collaborative initiative, echoing across the faculty. Faculty members started taking note, sometimes recommending new students to join the group. This ripple effect highlighted something powerful: peer influence mattered not only in academic success but also in shaping campus culture. Students who once struggled alone now had a space to share ideas, overcome challenges, and cheer each other on. For Reyhan, these changes were humbling. He never sought recognition, but the gratitude in his friends' eyes, the smiles from classmates who had once been lost, reminded him that kindness and consistency were stronger than any award. 9. Learning and growth. By the time their final year arrived, Reyhan and his friends were no longer the same people they had been as freshmen. The challenges they had faced, lack of motivation, personal doubts, academic pressure had shaped them, but they hadn't defined them. They had grown not just academically, but as people. Fajar still cracked jokes, but now he also offered to tutor juniors in public speaking. Denai still wrote music, but he also served as a student ambassador, helping first-year students adjust to university life. Alex was now known for his study guides and coding boot camps, often collaborating with Reyhan to run weekend workshops. And Reyhan? He remained the heart of the group, but with a new lightness in his step. The burden he once carried alone had become something shared. He had helped his friends find their footing, and in doing so, found deeper meaning in his own journey. On graduation day, as the ceremony ended and caps were thrown into the air, the four friends stood together under the trees at the edge of campus. The same trees that had once witnessed their struggles now watched them in celebration. "I can't believe we made it," Denai whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "We didn't just make it," Reyhan replied. "We grew. Together." As they took one last photo together in their red and black robes, laughter and memories filling the air, Reyhan felt a sense of peace. Campus life at Untag Surabaya had taught them far more than textbooks ever could. It had taught them that success isn't a straight line. That real strength lies in persistence. That support when offered sincerely can change lives. Final message. For any student walking through the halls of a university, the journey will be filled with ups and downs. There will be sleepless nights, moments of doubt, and times when giving up seems easier. But there will also be friendships, growth, breakthroughs, and unexpected kindness from people like Reyhan, who remind us that diligence, support, and friendship can light the way even in the most uncertain times. The future was now open before them, full of possibility. And they would face it not alone, but together.